I want to talk more about the margin of victory, right? Because the margin, they did everything they possibly could to sandbag this so that the blow would not be as detrimental, right? But you cannot escape. There's no media narrative that is going to allow Hillary Clinton to escape the reality that back in, and I'm sharing, I should be on your screen right now, back in in June, she had a 40-point lead over Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire. And in June, he was still the senator from the neighboring state. And so all of this time, they've been trying to weave this narrative of, well, this is his neighboring state, and of course he's going to do good. Well, this was his neighboring state back in June when you had a 40-point lead over Bernie Sanders. And now the final result is he beat you by a 21-point margin. There is no spin out of this. This is what, and my friends, this is what a revolution looks like. When you take the status quo and you turn it on its head and say, no, this is not what it's going to be. You led, but now we have the victory almost by the same margin that you were leading us in June. There's no way out of this for Hillary Clinton in terms of the narrative that comes out of New Hampshire. Let me go to David Grossman first. David, this margin and your expectations and the expectations game, I mean, what is it saying to you in terms of, or is it saying anything, or is it just like, wow?
Definitely wow. I had said, I think it was last week when I was on the show, I had mentioned that it is the neighboring state, so we expected him to do well, but I don't know if I had seen that poll before that you just had on screen, and that really does speak volumes. I didn't really take that into consideration when I had said that, so I may have been very, very wrong in that regard. As far as the margin of error, what's interesting is that, and I don't remember the source that I read it from, I'd have to go find it for you, but there was an article where they were saying that Bernie will get media coverage and the narrative will be at least more middle of the way if he could get at least 8 to 10 points out of Hillary in New Hampshire. Well, now he's got 21 points as of as the count looks right now. We'll see what happens, but no way to deny it. Like you said, there's absolutely no way to deny it. They can't ask for a recount. Well,
Yeah, wait, and that's what they said. It's like he has to win by at least 8 points for it to be a solid victory. This is 21 points, and I think you were saying like you wanted everybody to pause and just consider how amazing this victory was, and I just wanted to put it in context. I'm gonna put this back on the screen one more time. If you put it in context of where he came from, and this idea that he had an advantage, there was no advantage over Hillary Clinton in May. Actually, this starts back in May. There was no advantage. Hillary had a 40-point lead over Bernie Sanders on an average of all the polls, and he blew that out of the way. I don't know what part people would be lying to themselves with if they would continue to say after this that Bernie is not electable and that Hillary Clinton is inevitable. There's no narrative at this point from this summer that can be continued. The only narrative, I think, in my opinion, is that this is going to be a hell of a race. I'll throw that out there to anybody who wants to pick it up from there.
I'll take it.
Go ahead, Hank.
All right, so I'm looking at the same poll on my computer, and yeah, it's just it's amazing, where he was earlier this year. It's hard to believe what I'm not gonna say hard to believe. It's just, like you're saying, the closeness of the two states has an impact. But coming from 10%, to now he has like a 20 point lead right now in the actual election. That's impressive. I was a little worried until about a month ago when he really started to pull ahead of her. What was going to happen? Mm-hmm. I think the 20-point lead is really where it is right now, I think that's you know, I can work with that. And I'm looking at the polls on Real Clear right now, and it's saying, you know, he's 10 points, 5 points, 15 points. No, but he's 20 points ahead in the real election. And so I want everybody to keep that in mind. Look at Iowa. He was down 5, 10 points in most of the polls,
Right.
and he tied her. He tied her. So when everybody sees those polls, keep in mind that there's you know, there's a fluctuation, you know, +3 or -3 either way, you know, something like that. You know, it just because that poll says that, that doesn't mean that that's exactly what people are thinking, or that that's, you know, some pollsters try to manipulate the data.
Not even. I wouldn't even worry about them manipulating the data as much as if people turn out, it really can blow the polls out of the water, right?
Yeah.
Because the polls are generally based on people who are previous voters or people who expect to vote, and a lot of times they don't capture the burgeoning excitement that's underneath the.
It's the young voters. It's the young voters who have never voted before.
It's not only the yes, it is young voters, but I also want to throw in people who finally have something to be excited over, and that's not only the young voters, but that's the disenfranchised. Those are the disillusioned voters who were looking at their options back in May. Back in May, your option was Hillary and Jeb, and that was a depressing notion. And then
that was me. I saw that and I said, this guy has no way.
And then you honestly have a moment of epiphany where somebody else could actually do this and beat Hillary Clinton. I see Solomon jumped in the room. Solomon, welcome on board, man. Give us some of that background information you always bring.